city that forgot the sun. No one remembers exactly when the city became dark. The official records say the power grid collapsed during a winter storm 37 years ago. Others say the government abandoned the place after the factories closed. But those explanations never made sense, because even when generators arrived, even when people brought their own lights, the darkness remained. The city was called Blackridge once. Now people simply call it the Old City, and at night almost no one goes there, except for those who don't know better, or those who have no choice. Marcus didn't believe the stories. Urban legends were everywhere, cities swallowed by shadows, whispers in alleyways, missing travelers. But Marcus had spent the last 6 months documenting abandoned places across Europe, and every town had its own ghost story. This was just another one. His camera sat on the passenger seat as he drove down the cracked highway leading into Blackridge. The headlights cut through drifting fog that rolled slowly across the road like breathing smoke. The GPS had already failed 20 minutes earlier, but he could see the skyline now. Tall buildings, broken windows, no lights, not a single one. Marcus frowned. That's strange. Even abandoned cities usually had something. A security light, a passing car, a distant apartment glow. Blackridge looked like a photograph taken at midnight, and then forgotten. He pulled the car to a stop near a rusted sign. Welcome to Blackridge. Population. The number had been scratched away. Marcus grabbed his camera. This is Marcus Hale, he said into the microphone, beginning his recording. Urban exploration log, night entry. I've just arrived at Blackridge. He panned the camera toward the skyline. Locals claim the city's been uninhabited for decades. They also say the darkness here is different. He laughed softly. Let's find out. Marcus stepped out of the car. The moment his boots touched the road, something felt wrong. The air was colder. Not normal cold. Dead cold. The kind that belonged underground. The road into the city stretched between silent buildings. Marcus turned on his flashlight. The beam illuminated cracked pavement and rows of abandoned storefronts. A grocery store, a pharmacy, a movie theater with a faded poster still clinging to the wall. The title read, Last Showing. The paint had peeled away so badly, it almost looked like the letters were bleeding down the wall. Marcus moved slowly, filming everything. The silence was heavy. Cities usually made noise, even empty ones. Wind, rats, loose metal signs clanging somewhere in the distance. But Blackridge was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Marcus kept walking. His flashlight beams slid across windows, doors, and dark alleys that stretched like open mouths between buildings. Then he heard it. Footsteps. He froze. The sound stopped. Marcus slowly turned the camera behind him. Nothing. Just the road, the fog, and the darkness. Probably echo, he muttered. He kept walking. The footsteps returned. One step, then another, exactly matching his pace. Marcus stopped again. The sound stopped again. His chest tightened. Hello, he called. No answer. He shined his light down the street. Empty. Completely empty. Marcus forced a laugh. Okay, that's creepy. He began walking faster. The footsteps followed, perfectly synchronized, step for step. Marcus spun around suddenly, shining the flashlight wildly behind him. Nothing. No person. No animal. Just the empty road fading into darkness. Then he noticed something strange. His footprints in the dust. sets. One set belonged to him. The other was walking beside him. Marcus stared at the ground. The second set of footprints ended exactly where he stood. Slowly, very slowly, another footprint appeared in the dust beside him. No shoe, no leg, just the shape pressing itself into the ground as if something invisible had stepped forward. Marcus stumbled backward. The camera shook in his hands. Another footprint formed, and another. Something was walking toward him. He turned and ran. The street stretched endlessly ahead of him. His breathing echoed between the buildings as he sprinted past broken storefronts and empty intersections. Behind him, the invisible footsteps began to run too. Faster, closer. Marcus reached an intersection and darted into an alley. His flashlight beam flickered wildly across brick walls and piles of trash. He kept running until the footsteps suddenly stopped. Marcus slowed down, then stopped. The alley was silent again, completely silent. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Okay. Maybe there's someone messing with me. But deep down, Marcus knew that wasn't true. Because when he looked at the ground again, the footprints were gone. All of them, even his own. The dust was perfectly smooth, as if no one had walked there in years. A sound drifted through the darkness, a distant creaking. Marcus turned the camera towards the end of the alley. There was a door, an old metal door built into the side of a building. It was slowly swinging open and closed, open and closed. Creak, creak, creak. Marcus approached it carefully. The flashlight beam revealed faded letters above the door. Blackridge Transit Station. Subway entrance, Marcus whispered. He looked back toward the empty street. The darkness outside seemed thicker now. Closer, like fog pressing against glass. The door creaked open again. From below came a faint sound. A voice. Marcus froze. Someone was speaking down there. A whisper. Too quiet to understand, but definitely human. Hello, Marcus called. The whispering stopped. Silence returned. Then the voice spoke again. Clearer this time. You shouldn't be here. Marcus stepped closer to the doorway. Who's down there? No answer. Just darkness descending down a staircase into the earth. Marcus hesitated. Then he raised his camera. This is Marcus Hale, entering the Blackridge Transit Station. He stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the stairwell. Marcus spun around and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. The door was locked from the outside. The staircase led down into darkness, so thick the flashlight barely cut through it. Dust covered everything, the handrails, the walls, the floor. It looked like no one had used the station in decades. But as Marcus reached the bottom step, he saw something strange. Fresh footprints in the dust, dozens of them, leading into the tunnel. Marcus slowly followed them. The station platform stretched into shadow on both sides. Old train tracks disappeared into black tunnels. A flickering sign hung above the platform. It still had power somehow. The letters glowed faintly. Last train arrives at midnight. Marcus checked his watch. 11:58 p.m. The whispering voice returned, this time right behind him. You shouldn't have come here. Marcus spun around. No one was there. But something moved in the darkness at the edge of the platform. A shape. Tall, thin, unnatural. His flashlight flickered. The shape vanished. Marcus backed away slowly. Who's there? The whisper answered from everywhere at once. We waited so long. The lights above the platform flickered, then turned off. The city was never empty. The train roared out of the tunnel with no lights, no driver, and no windows. The doors slid open with a metallic scream, and inside, the seats were full of silent shapes sitting perfectly still in the darkness, waiting for one more passenger. Marcus screamed. The camera fell to the floor, and the recording ended there. The camera was found 3 weeks later by a group of hikers who wandered too close to Blackridge. The footage was still intact. The last frame showed the train doors slowly closing, and just before the darkness swallowed everything, a face appeared in the window. Marcus Hale. His eyes were wide, his mouth open in a silent scream, and behind him, hundreds of pale figures staring directly at the camera. The train departed into the tunnel. It never came back. Locals say that sometimes, on quiet nights, you can hear a train passing beneath the old city. But there are no tracks connected to the outside world anymore. And if you stand very still, you might hear footsteps walking beside you, even when no one is there. And if you ever see the sign that reads, "Last train arrives at midnight," do not wait for it. Because the train in Blackridge only runs one way, and once you board it, the city never lets you leave. No one knows exactly what happened after the camera stopped recording, but the story of Blackridge didn't end there. In fact, the camera only made things worse. The hikers who found it brought the footage to the nearest town, a place called Alders Creek. They showed it to the police first. The police said it was fake. Then they watched it again, and again. By the 4th time, none of them were laughing anymore. The recording clearly showed Marcus entering the city. It showed the empty streets, the footprints appearing beside him, the station stairs, the platform, and the train. But something in the footage disturbed them more than the obvious horror. Every time they replayed the last minute, they noticed something new in the darkness. Shapes moving behind Marcus before the train arrived. Faces barely visible in broken windows above the platform. And sometimes, if the screen brightness was turned all the way up, a tall shadow could be seen standing behind him the entire time. Watching, waiting. The police sealed the recording and told the hikers to forget what they had seen. They claimed the video was part of an elaborate internet hoax, but the hikers knew what they heard in the recording. When Marcus dropped the camera and the train doors began closing, there was a sound buried beneath the noise of the tracks. Hundreds of voices whispering together in perfect unison. "Stay." A week later, one of the hikers disappeared. His name was Daniel Kraus. He was the one who had actually picked up the camera in the alley outside the transit station. His friends said Daniel had been acting strangely after they watched the footage. He kept pausing the video at certain frames, staring into the dark corners of the screen. Once he said something that chilled everyone in the room. "They're not passengers," Daniel whispered. "They're residents." 2 nights later, Daniel left his apartment at 11:30 p.m. His neighbor saw him walking down the street, carrying a flashlight and a backpack. He looked calm, almost peaceful. When the neighbor asked where he was going so late, Daniel smiled and said something that didn't make sense. "I think I missed my train." He was never seen again. After Daniel vanished, people in Alders Creek began reporting strange things. Footsteps behind them when they walked home at night. figures in empty rooms, dark shapes standing at the ends of streets before melting away into shadows. One woman swore she saw a train pass through the woods behind her house at midnight, but there were no tracks there, just trees and dirt. The police tried to dismiss the stories as paranoia, until Officer Lena Moritz made a mistake. She decided to watch the footage alone. It was 11:45 p.m. when she started the recording in the station office. By the time the train appeared in the video, Lena had leaned closer to the screen, studying the passengers. Something about them looked wrong. Their bodies were still, but their heads were slightly tilted toward the camera, as if they knew someone was watching. Lena paused the video. Then she zoomed in on one of the faces near the train door. Her stomach twisted. The face belonged to Daniel Kraus, but Daniel had only disappeared 2 days earlier. And in the footage, the passengers looked like they had been sitting there for decades. Lena leaned back slowly in her chair. That's impossible. The screen flickered. At first, she thought the video had glitched, but then she realized something terrifying. The movement wasn't coming from the video. It was coming from behind her. The station office had a large window overlooking the parking lot. Lena turned slowly in her chair. The parking lot lights flickered weakly in the fog outside. At first, she saw nothing. Then the lights dimmed slightly, and shapes appeared in the mist. People standing perfectly still. Dozens of them, maybe more. They were scattered across the parking lot, their faces hidden in shadow. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Lena's heart began to pound. She stood up slowly and stepped closer to the window. The figures remained motionless. Then one of them stepped forward. Just one step. The sound of the movement echoed faintly through the glass. Lena felt her throat tighten. She grabbed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Moritz. I think I have." The radio crackled violently with static, and beneath the static, a whisper emerged. The same whisper from the video. "Stay." The parking lot lights shut off all at once. Darkness swallowed the figures outside. Lena backed away from the window. Her breathing was loud in the silent office. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, measured, approaching the door. The knob began to turn. Lena drew her gun and aimed at the entrance. The door creaked open. The hallway beyond was empty, but the footprints appeared on the dusty floor just inside the doorway. One step, then another. Something invisible had entered the room. Lena fired 3 shots. The bullets punched holes into the far wall. The footsteps didn't stop. They kept coming closer, right up to the desk, right up to her. Then the whisper spoke again, right beside her ear. "The city remembers." The police report from that night was short. Officer Lena Moritz was listed as missing. The office door had been locked from the inside. Her gun was found on the floor, with 3 bullets missing. The security camera footage showed nothing entering the room, nothing leaving. Just Lena standing there alone, until she suddenly vanished from the frame. The video cut out exactly at midnight. Months passed after Lena disappeared. Alders Creek grew quieter. Fewer people stayed out late. Some families moved away entirely. The road leading to Blackridge was eventually closed with concrete barriers and warning signs. But warnings rarely stop curiosity, especially the kind that grows on the internet. The footage of Marcus Hale eventually leaked online. Millions watched it. Most people thought it was a brilliant horror short film. But a small group of viewers noticed something disturbing. Every time someone uploaded the video to a new website, the ending changed slightly. At first, the train passengers were just shapes. Then faces started appearing more clearly in the windows. Faces that weren't there before. Some viewers claimed they recognized those faces. Missing persons. People who had vanished over the years in different towns across the region. By the 10th upload, something else appeared in the footage. A tall figure standing at the far end of the platform. Its body stretched unnaturally thin. Its arms hanging far below its knees. Its face was never visible. It just stood there, watching Marcus, watching the train, watching the camera. The comments under the video exploded with theories, but no one noticed the most important detail. With every new upload, the train looked slightly more full. 3 years after Marcus disappeared, a truck driver named Elias Voss broke through the barrier on the Blackridge road during a snowstorm. His GPS had malfunctioned, and he was desperate to find shelter. The storm howled across the highway as he drove into the silent city. At first, he thought the place was abandoned, like the stories said. But as he drove deeper into the streets, he noticed lights flickering in the distance. Dim, yellow, moving slowly through the fog. Elias followed the lights until he reached the center of the city. There, in the middle of the main street, stood a subway entrance. A faded sign above the stairs read, Blackridge Transit Station. And beneath it, another sign flickered weakly. Last train arrives at midnight. Elias checked the clock in his truck. 11:59 p.m. He stepped out into the snow. The wind died instantly. The entire city fell silent. Somewhere beneath the ground, metal wheels began to turn. Elias felt the vibration through the pavement. A train was coming. He turned toward the station entrance slowly. And from the darkness below the stairs, dozens of pale faces were staring up at him, waiting. And deep in the tunnel behind them, the tall shadow moved closer to the platform. The train doors opened just in time. Because in Blackridge, the last train always arrives exactly when someone new enters the city, and it always leaves full. Elias Voss stood at the top of the subway stairs, while snow drifted silently across the empty street behind him. The storm that had pushed him off the highway had suddenly gone quiet, as if the weather itself refused to cross deeper into Blackridge. The only sound now was the distant grinding of metal beneath the ground. The train was still moving through the tunnels. Elias gripped his flashlight tightly. "Hello," he called down the stairwell. His voice echoed into the darkness below and disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of the pale faces at the bottom step slowly tilted upward. The face belonged to a woman with hollow eyes and gray skin stretched tight across her bones. Her lips moved slightly. No sound came out. But Elias somehow understood the word she mouthed. Late. The flashlight trembled in his hand. "What?" he whispered. More faces appeared behind the woman. Dozens of them crowded together in the darkness beneath the station lights. They were standing shoulder to shoulder on the platform, their bodies unnaturally still. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. Yet all of them were staring directly at him. The grinding noise grew louder. Wind rushed upward from the tunnel, carrying the smell of rust and cold earth. The woman at the bottom Elias shook his head. "No, I'm not going down there." The woman's mouth opened wider this time. The other figures around her began whispering together in the same low voice Marcus had recorded years earlier. "Late, late, late." Elias stepped back from the stairs. His boots scraped against the frozen pavement. For a second, he thought about turning around and running back to the truck. But when he looked behind him, the street was gone. The road he had driven down had disappeared into thick darkness. The buildings on both sides leaned inward like walls closing around him. And somewhere far above the rooftops, the clouds blocked out the stars. The city had sealed itself. Elias turned back toward the subway entrance with a rising sense of dread. The whispering voices were louder now. The figures below the stairs had begun to move slightly, their heads turning together as if listening for something. The grinding metal sound became a roar. The train burst from the tunnel below with a violent screech. The platform lights flickered to life. Elias could see the train clearly now. It was old, far older than any subway train he had ever seen. Its metal sides were blackened and scarred with rust. The windows were cloudy and scratched, as if something had tried to claw its way out from inside. The doors slid open with a long metallic scream. Every passenger inside turned their heads toward the stairwell. Elias staggered backward. There were hundreds of them packed inside the train cars. Their bodies sat rigid in the seats while their faces stared upward toward him in perfect silence. Some of the passengers looked decades old, their skin gray and thin like dried paper. Others looked more recent. A young man wearing a hiking jacket, a police officer with a broken badge pinned to her uniform, a man holding a camera that hung loosely from his neck. Marcus Hale's eyes stared blankly through the window, frozen in the same expression captured in the final frame of his recording. Elias felt his legs weaken. "This isn't real," he whispered. "This can't be real." The whispering from the platform suddenly stopped. Complete silence fell across the station. Then a new voice spoke from deep inside the train. Slow, calm, ancient. "You are late." The voice did not echo like a human voice should. It seemed to come from every direction at once. From the train cars, from the tunnel walls, from the darkness above the city itself. Elias stepped closer to the top stair without realizing it. Something about the voice pulled at him, like gravity pulling water downhill. I didn't mean to come here," Elias said quietly. The passengers inside the train tilted their heads slightly. Their movements were perfectly synchronized. "Everyone means to come here," the voice answered. The tall shadow appeared at the far end of the platform. It slowly stepped forward into the flickering station lights. Elias felt his stomach drop. The thing was taller than any human, its body long and crooked, like a broken lamppost. Its arms hung so low they nearly touched the ground. Its skin looked like black smoke stretched thin across bones. And where its face should have been, there was only darkness. "The city calls," the voice continued, "and eventually everyone answers." Elias tried to move backward again, but his feet refused to cooperate. His body felt heavy, like invisible hands were pressing down on his shoulders. "No," he whispered desperately. "I'm leaving." The tall shadow moved another step closer. The passengers inside the train leaned slightly slowly toward the doors. "Waiting. You already arrived," the voice replied. Elias suddenly noticed something strange about the snow falling around him. The flakes stopped moving the moment they crossed the station entrance, frozen in the air, suspended between moments. Time itself had slowed. The city had trapped him inside its breath. The tall shadow lifted one long arm and pointed toward the open train doors. "Last train," the voice said, "always on time." The passengers began whispering again. This time the word was different. "Stay." Elias screamed and forced his legs to move. He turned and ran toward the street, toward the truck, toward anything that wasn't the train. But the moment he reached the edge of the sidewalk, he stopped abruptly. The road was gone. In its place was a deep black void stretching between the buildings, a bottomless darkness where the city streets used to be. The entire world beyond the station had vanished. Behind him, the train doors began to close slowly. Elias felt panic explode in his chest. "Wait!" he shouted. The doors paused. The whispering voices grew louder again. Late, but not gone. Elias turned slowly back toward the platform. The tall shadow stood beside the train now, its long arms still extended toward the entrance. The doors slid open again with a grinding shriek. An empty seat waited just inside the first car. Elias realized something horrifying. There was exactly one seat open. The whispering voices became gentle, almost comforting. "You belong somewhere," they murmured. "Everyone belongs somewhere." Elias felt tears forming in his eyes. His mind raced through memories of long highways, empty motels, endless nights spent driving alone across countries that never felt like home. The whispering continued. "No more roads," the voices promised. "No more searching." Elias stepped down the first stair. The passengers inside the train smiled faintly. Another step. The tall shadow lowered its arms slowly as if welcoming him. Another step. The train lights flickered softly across the platform. Elias reached the bottom stair. The whispering faded into silence. The tall shadow moved aside to let him pass. Elias walked through the open doors and sat in the empty seat. The moment he did, the train doors slammed shut. The train began moving immediately. No driver, no signal. Just the grinding sound of wheels pulling the heavy cars back into the tunnel. As the train disappeared into the darkness, the passengers returned to perfect stillness. Elias stared forward, breathing slowly. Across the aisle, Marcus Hale sat with his camera still hanging around his neck. His head turned slightly toward Elias. His lips moved just enough to form a whisper. "You hear it too, don't you?" Elias frowned. "Hear what?" Marcus's empty eyes stared into the darkness beyond the window. Far ahead in the tunnel, another station light flickered faintly in the distance. And somewhere deeper beneath the city, countless other voices whispered through the endless underground. The next train coming. Because Blackridge was never just one city. It was only the first stop. And the train never stops running.